Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I am Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and I am really excited because all week long we have been talking creative industries in Colorado. So Monday we had Emily Schramm, Tuesday we had Mike Maloney with Coda Longboards, and today I'm very excited to have in studio with me Meghan DePonceau. How are you, Meghan?
I am well, and yourself?
Fantastic. So Meghan, you are part of our Creative Industries Week because we are talking with you as a stand-up comic here in Denver.
Yes, indeedy.
Yes. So, gosh, being a stand-up comedian, I think has this maybe a little bit of stigma that you immediately start making money right on the scene, right?
Yes, every person who says they're a stand-up comic is a millionaire that you meet. No, it's a long haul. I like to describe it as like the breakdown is it's kind of like going to college for comedy. You end up, you start by doing open mics that are very sad and long and treacherous, and it's almost like undergrad, and you pay to go out and have beers, and then you start getting booked on showcases a few years into that, and then you start building your own shows, and then you start going on tour. And then hopefully after that, you're strong enough of a comic to start finding other ways to break out and get seen and get better stage time and whatnot. But by the time you see a comedian on TV, it's been like 10 years of them working towards it.
Which is not something you hear about very often because you're like, oh, I just found this new comedian, right?
Yeah,
and you're like,
absolutely. New comedian. Well, that's why when people ask me my favorite comics, I'm like, you haven't heard of them yet. My entire life is comedy, and these are my heroes, but you still don't even know who they are. You might have seen them do 5 minutes on Conan or something, but that's it.
Yeah, which even that point, right?
Yes, that's pretty much making it. That's like your set. Then you're doing your headlining clubs around the country, and yeah, that's pretty much your make or break right there.
That's your tell is when you can make it on that 5 minutes on that late night show. Okay.
Yeah, that's what everybody has their different successes, and what in every tier you have something that motivates you that you want, or some show you want to do, or something that you want to, or some crowd that you want to just like destroy or crush, if you will. But yeah, and it's a long haul.
So speaking of long hauls, how long have you been on the scene?
I've been doing comedy about 6 years, a little under 6 years. Yep, I moved to Denver 4.5, almost 5 years ago. Halloween will be 5 years.
Oh, well, happy early anniversary.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, so where did you come from then?
I started in Buffalo, New York. I was managing a bar that had a restaurant in a bar, or a bar in the restaurant, and I was having a monthly comedy show. And I remember watching these comics come in, and I was like, this is what I want to do. And I was 21 at the time, and I was like, all right. And then I got nervous about it and held off. And then about 6 months later, I went, did my first mic, and I unfortunately was very good at it, which I hated because I did really well at first, and then I bombed for like the next 3 years.
Oh, no.
So, because I was really dark and raunchy at first, and then you have to kind of, to be able to be more marketable, or to be able to do more shows, or to be... Especially when you're a new comic, you go up earlier in shows, so sometimes people aren't ready for dirty material.
You mean they haven't had enough to drink?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right.
So you have to be a little more mindful of that when you're starting off, and so it took a little bit of a time for me to figure that out and figure out what my voice was.
Yeah. So I comparatively speaking, do you find that the comedy scene is the same in every city, or?
No, I think there's lots of different scenes, and traveling gets you to know that. I mean, New York and LA are going to be top dogs because of the industry behind it, and they're always going to be there. And then I know Chicago's kind of right behind, but it's a little more heavier on the improv. And then I think Denver's right there, like right up in that realm. There's such a really strong base for, you have Comedy Works, which a lot of comedians consider one of the best clubs in the country, and they love to be there and do that. I mean, Dave Chappelle loves to be there. So many people make a point because as an audience member, you might not call it the best club because you're kind of packed in there, but it's low and long, so that's what you want for comedy.
Yeah.
And then you also have the improv. And then the nice part about Denver is the DIY scene here. There's just so much money in breweries and other venues that are willing to pay for entertainment.
Yes. So here's one thing that we've got going on today. We had a last minute cancellation. We were supposed to have a different guest, but Meghan was kind enough to reach out to some friends. And joining us right now is Jeremy Pysher. Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, how we doing?
Good. Thank you so much for popping in last minute.
I am a great plan B. I am always the second. Oh, someone dropped off the show. Call Jeremy. I'm good for that.
Oh, good. Get your name out there, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely happy to be here. I was sweaty riding a bike, but I changed my shirts and I came over.
Oh, thank you so much.
We really did us a favor.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. On both accounts. Yes, thank you. So, Jeremy, I was just asking Meghan about her background, so let's hear a little bit about yours. Yeah, how you got started in the comedy scene.
I moved to Denver from Buffalo area.
Now,
We met out here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a fun story for later on. But and then I was working out in Littleton, and then I went to a comedy show to see my favorite comic, Kyle Kinane, at Comedy Works, and then the openers. Elliot Woolsey hosted, who's a great Denver comic, and then Ben Roy, who lives in LA now and is on those who can on True TV, was featuring, and I was amazed, and then I was like, oh, these guys are Denver guys, you can do it here. And then a month or so later, I started going up and going to open mics, and then started seeing those guys at open mics, which was fun.
Oh, that's cool.
And then just slowly been doing it for 3.5 years now. So
3.5, okay. Yeah, so we were talking a little bit about how it's kind of a long, hard road, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the things that you have to make money.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you have to stay afloat in your regular life. You got to pay bills, and so not all of you live in your mom's basement then.
No.
Okay.
Definitely not.
Okay.
Never
Perfect.
did.
All right. So let's start with a little bit. You mentioned that you've got a bartending background and you do a lot of odd jobs, and you've got some really cool things on your plate right now. So let's talk about that.
So I was managing a bar and trying to do comedy at the same time, which a lot of the bartending shifts in comedy happen at the same time of the day at night. And a lot of very successful comics have like a day job, but that's never been I'm more service industry. So when I left that position, I didn't believe that I could do part-time bartending. So I did a lot of catering. I did surveys. I did dog walking and sitting. I did any kind of gig type structure that I could do. And then with those resources, started kind of trying to make your own brand and be able to do things that you can then make money in a more entertainment side. So I started hosting bingo and these giant trivia nights, and started throwing a traveling house party comedy show called Shantytown that mixes with music, so we kind of bring the scenes together. But yeah, as far as anything on a microphone, I haven't done karaoke hosting yet, but other than that.
Would you do karaoke?
Oh, absolutely. No one would want that, but
that's not host. I don't want to be a KJ. That doesn't.
KJ,
no, it doesn't.
I didn't even know that was a thing, actually.
And you can make a pretty good living off of doing that. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, you guys probably have been through some creative industries trying to keep up with the scene, right?
Yeah, I mean, some things that have fallen into my lap and his as far as different projects to be able to do. We run kind of the umbrella of what the stuff that we do is called That's My Jam, and it started with the trivia, and then we also had a web series that we basically reviewed food. He grew up white trash and eats junk food, and I grew up working in fine dining restaurants, so we'd make each other eat the different styles of food, which is fun.
And then people always tell me I was right, so...
Well, yeah, because it's full of trans fats and other ingredients you can't pronounce.
Apparently.
Not knocking it. I am a huge Twinkie Doritos fan myself, so not knocking it by any means.
But yeah, you basically have to go and present yourself in the skill that you develop in comedy, which is a certain confidence and ability to MC, host, or anything, and then try to just redistribute it so that way you're making money, because a lot of comedy shows you get paid in drink tickets and maybe $20, especially when you're starting before you get to feature or headline shows. It's nothing that you can live off of, really, unless you're running shows yourself or hosting nights or whatnot. But you really have to find other ways, because if I take off bartending, that's a night, that's hundreds of dollars I lost. So I try to find things to compensate. So
yeah, I've been in the hospitality industry myself for a long time, and it gives you thick skin.
Yes, it does.
Some great stories.
And a really good understanding of the salt of the earth that is horrible people out there. So
yes, exactly. So Meghan was mentioning that her first go-to when she was first on the scene was dark humor, raunchy comedy. So tell us a little bit about your style, Jeremy.
I am the opposite. I am clean and goofy. I mean, like, if I'm just talking, I may cuss every once in a while, just because
Well, not today.
No, I know. We're on the radio. But I just like silly stuff. I like to be goofy. I like to have a fun time.
He's very for the clean style, which you should be able to have, and that makes you good. And he could do all of his material, and it's pretty much generally clean. And I'm always impressed by that.
Every year for like the holidays, like the clubs always go clean, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's fine for me. I can do that. That's not a problem. I just like that. That's not anything that I do on purpose. That's just how I write. I just think goofy things make me laugh. I'll sometimes just go up there and make a face after 30 seconds of being quiet, and people will laugh. So sometimes words aren't important.
I have a goofy face to start, so it's really easy.
That's fair.
So I'm curious to know this. It's not an easy scene, right? You got to put a lot of work into it. Before you knew that about it, what inspired you to want to be a comedian? Was there a certain person that you saw? Or?
I remember very, very specifically, there was John Oliver's New York stand-up show. Comic Michael Lawrence went up and did a 5-minute set. And he had it was so good. It was like one of my favorite 5-minute sets I had ever seen. And I had done film and wanting to write like sketches and comedy based in like writing for television and movies. And that was kind of a background that I worked on. But then I saw this and like just how direct it was. One person, one microphone, audience. And he wrote a joke that made me, when I heard it, so physically angry that I didn't write that. And I was like, you're not allowed to feel that way. You're not trying. And that was it. That's when I wanted to go try. So it was that moment.
Right. So inspiration.
Absolutely.
Out of anger.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, it was like, it was that jealous and envy. And once you learn how to handle those emotions working in comedy, you'll be fine.
Right, so the green-eyed monster gets you.
It's constantly people are going to be getting on shows and doing well, and you're going to be judging how funny they are versus you. And if you let that bog you all down, as opposed to just see that there's so much content and opportunity, and there's, especially here in Denver with the scene, which you really have to remind yourself constantly, if you let that bog you down, you won't succeed.
Yeah. How about you? What was your inspiration?
I grew up loving stand-up comedy. I've always watched Comedy Central's Half Hour, like Mitch Hedberg's. I watched over and over again. I ended up stealing that on the internet. I downloaded that using LimeWire with dial-up internet. It took about 2 months.
Confessions over here.
I think the statue is up now.
LimeWire ruined so many people's computers. I think you're okay.
So I just grew up loving stand-up. I've always watched it and listened to it. And then I started working at an amusement park in a games department when I was 17. And they gave me a microphone and told me to make fun of people, and then they would play the games and give me money. And it worked out. So then I was like, oh, put the two together, and then started doing stand-up.
So do you make fun of people on stage now?
Myself.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Or maybe the last comic if you're like emceeing a quick joke on it. Like that's kind of the rule if you're hosting in between. You don't want to do material really. You want to just, if you can have a joke based off of something the last comic just said, great. And it's an open rule. We all can make fun of each other. So
I would imagine, yeah, you have to be.
There's thick skin.
Usually only people I know. I don't.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to take an out of towner you've never met and be like, ooh, sick burn, unless it's really good.
Yeah.
It's that like the one rule. Yeah, unless it's really good.
It's got to be 100 times more funny than it is offensive. Those are the rules. It's like writing roast jokes. You know, it's got to be way funnier than it is offensive. So
there you go. See, these are all nuances I'm learning today. So you mentioned that you guys do a podcast. Right?
Jeremy
I do a podcast.
Okay.
I do it with my buddy Andreas Besserell. It's called Joke and Destroy. It's on, can I say the network it's on? I don't know if those words are okay.
Sex Pot Comedy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
It's a comedy.
They are the same company that produced Super Troopers 2.
It's a merge of a dispensary and Sexy Pizza.
Yeah.
So that's where it came from.
Sexy Pizza and then what used to be Terrapin, whatever it was before, Denver Relief. They came up and they produced comedy, and it's great. We have our 58th episode came out yesterday.
Congratulations.
On Wednesday, and that's been every week, so that's been fun.
It sounds really cool, but it's really just an excuse that he gets to hang out with his best friend every hour and then talk to comics that come into town, which is the best. Like once you start hanging out with comics, that's who you want to hang out with.
Oh yeah, I have a friend, Jodie Champion.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very funny lady.
Very funny. If you're gonna look her up, it's Jodee. I have to say that. Yeah, Jodie Champion. Which is how I got hooked up here with Meghan, and Meghan brought Jeremy with her. So again, thank you, Jodie. I have to thank you for that. But yeah, you're right. Once you start hanging out with comics, it's like, oh, they make me feel good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, a lot of comics are constantly there's a lot of stereotypes about this type of person that is a comic. You have to have self-deprecating and have maybe low self-esteem or seeking it. I can see there's different points, and you just try to make your weaknesses into your strengths on stage, and be vulnerable. And a lot of people can't be that vulnerable. And once you're around people that vulnerable, who can laugh at everything or make fun of everything in a little bit of way, it just makes a nice high energy all the time. So
yeah, definitely. Well, and that's one of the things, right? Everyone has a little bit of a dark past. Everyone has a little bit of something that
there's a little tragedy to every comic, a little tint to it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about things that like keep you involved in the scene.
Okay. I think a big thing to mention as far as you mean helping out the scene?
Yeah.
Or, okay. I mean, I used to run a show that was awesome called Amuse Booze, which was like a bartending competition inside a comedy show. And that died because it was very costly, but it was a wonderful show. I would buy all of my bartender friends who would come and do their cocktails. I'd buy them all the expensive ingredients they'd want, and I get it because I love bartending. But when that stopped after a year and a half, I didn't have a show or a mic. I wasn't doing anything for the scene, and I feel like a big part of it is if you want to be actively booked, if you want to be constantly connected, you have to do something. So I took over 5280comedy.com, which is a really great resource to any audience member or anybody who wants to go check out. If you wanted to try a mic, there's a list there, but don't. And then it'll be better off if you didn't. And then there's an outline of all the showcases, shows, the podcasts, the clubs, the different, web series, everything that is Colorado comedy is listed on there.
It's a great tool for traveling comics as well.
Yeah.
As well as people looking to start traveling comics. Always use that because it gives them everything they need right there.
It's email addresses for bookings and book.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so you can connect directly. Because, I mean, yes, you might say you go to a city and you do someone's show, but then you go to that city at a different time, then you're just asking somebody to vouch for you. If you're not a name that has a Conan credit or something and you're looking, you have your tape, but if you have a connection, it's a community across the board. You can travel. If you're down to sleep on couches and floors, you can go anywhere.
I would agree. Yes. I have the travel bug myself, but
no other city has that. I've gone to Chicago, Portland, New York, big comedy cities, and they have a couple websites that try to do it, and they all never really get it done as well as we have it. So we're very lucky to have 5280 in Denver.
It's a nice, so it's really easy to be like, hey, check that out. If you don't want to come to this show, check out what's in your neighborhood. So that's definitely something that kept me involved over to a point. I felt like I was the comedy stalker of Denver comedy because I would say yes to every event, so then it'd be in my Facebook, so I'd know to share and know to add, and then that's just what I've been doing for 2 years. So
yeah.
And then also running your own shows really keeps you going, or getting a new bit and wanting to go to a mic or run it through the gambit, as I call it, like how many mics you can do in a week, or whatever individual goal that you have for that week, or whatever you want to do to get funnier or get better or quicker, and you want to show it off. And if it's something good, you want other comics to see it, so then they book you, and then you can keep growing.
Lovely. I love that advice. And getting started, right? You mentioned doing the open mics, and is that how you both started? Just going to open mics? And
that's how any comic really has to start, unless maybe they're a YouTube sensation. You really have to go through the trenches.
I'm having a hard time imagining a YouTube sensation of just somebody standing there with a mic trying to be hilarious.
It's new, but they sell out comedy clubs way better than a lot of really well experienced comedians now.
Not the most straight stand-up style, but comedians. And there's a lot of different avenues. I mean, I guess some comics I know started in improv and then shifted over to stand-up or did a balance of the two.
Okay.
The only improv I ever really do is when it's a comedy show that you might have to do some style of improv on, like some kind of quick, or like Doom Room is a show that you have to kind of be improv, or something where they don't tell you ahead, so you can't have any written material or planned or anything.
Okay. So you mentioned that you've been doing this for 3.5 years, about. So how did you fall into doing the podcast with your buddy?
He started it like a month or two before me, and then we were always at the same open mics, and we became good friends. And then I had been working with Sexpot before. I helped produce a web series called Video Games that we host video games tournaments now at Mutiny Information Cafe down on South Broadway. And so I was working with them, and I just asked, you guys have this podcast studio. What do we need to do to use it? And they're like, okay, do 15 episodes and give us an outline. And I was like, okay, that's all we need to do. And I've seen so many people have started and failed it since then. But we just got in with Sexpot and then just started recording and just started asking people. Probably too early, I asked a comic that I really like from LA who was in town. I was like, you guys want to do my dumb podcast? And it was number 9 or 10, and I hate it now. I really want to just delete that episode.
Oh, no.
But, so just slowly over time, you get, sitting here, you get better at interviewing people and just sitting there and talking and not saying dumb things.
Yes, I have definitely run into that as well.
Some people just like Dave Grohl, and you don't, so.
That's the entire theme of his podcast. It's just making fun of Dave Grohl. That's it. That's all it is.
Have you had Dave Grohl on?
Not yet.
Okay, is that a goal? Yeah, you should campaign.
You should reach out. You should reach out to Dave Grohl.
Yeah.
More or less, we like to get into stories. It's called Joke and Destroy, so we like to tell things of how we've kind of destroyed ourselves a little bit, and then make jokes about it. Drunken college stories, getting involved with the cops, things like that.
Okay, so physically destroying yourself, as I'm sure,
and
in other ways.
reputation-wise, and financially, and medically.
I'm going to have to give that a listen for sure. So before we go to break here, we have a couple minutes left. How can I find you guys?
Yeah, I am on Instagram and Twitter at Meghan is a joke, Meghan is a joke. Also, we have a website, tmj.com, which is That's My Jam.
TMJFF.
Oh, pardon me, tmjff.com.
That's My Jam food fights.
And it's our umbrella of all the trivia nights, the bingo, all the different things that we run. Also, the things that we run separately are on there too, because why not use one giant website for it?
Yeah.
So that's definitely, the accessibility. And then 5280comedy.com is a great resource for anybody else out there.
And then I am on all the social media, just at Jeremy Pysher, because no one else has had that, so that's pretty cool. Pysher's Pysher. And then Joke and Destroy you can find on iTunes, Stitcher, all the place you find podcasts. And that's my jam. I think that's pretty much where I can be found.
Oh yeah, and you can find us at That's My Jam FF as far as Twitter, Instagram, and then also I have the show at Infinite Monkey Theorem at Uncorked Comedy.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Joke and Destroy also has a live show. We do every other month at Ratio, the second Wednesday of the month. So we do at Ratio Beer Works down on Larimer and 30th up in 5 Points, and that's always a good time. Me and Andreas just go and terrorize the crowd, and then we have some of the stand-ups that have been on the show. Not terrorize. We have a good time.
Everyone can sense, right? You get.
Last time we got a bag full of Deadpool 2 koozies right before the show started, and they said, give them out. So we had fun with that.
Yeah, they threw them in 3 seconds to everyone. I was like, what is this?
Just sprinkle them on the crowd. We're going to be right back here on Connect and Collaborate. Stay with us. We're continuing our series on creative industries with the comedy scene here in Denver. We have Meghan DePonceau and Jeremy Pysher. Stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate. Like and subscribe our YouTube page in the meantime. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and once again, we are talking creative industries this week, and I have in studio with me Meghan DePonceau and Jeremy Pysher.
Hello, hello.
Hello, welcome back from that 5-minute break. Are you guys exhausted?
Very well hydrated.
Awesome. Perfect. So I want to get into this trivia that
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys host, right? And this is a co-hosting thing. First of all, what made you decide to do that? And then we'll talk a little bit about what it is. And
Yeah. I mean, doing comedy, you want to have things that are staples that you can, on your monthly budget, have money coming in that then you can rely on, as opposed to just guessing what budgets for shows and whatnot are, or where you're going to get paid. So to have those kind of staples. So we started. Well, it kind of started. I went to do a trivia night, and it was for Parks and Rec trivia, and I'm a huge Parks and Recreation fan.
oh, okay, the show. I thought you literally meant Parks and Rec. I was like,
Oh, I'm really into national parks. I know everything. Oh man, that is very Leslie Knope. Like, she would know every national parks director. Liam Bonneville, the bad boy. So I went in costume. I was Ron Swanson. I was all into it. It was
love
really
it.
fun, and it was great. It was put on okay. I mean, it was questions, and it was very bare bones, which I think a lot of trivia is, but there wasn't any moderation. So we were in a tiny space for a lot of people. So no one was checking. All these people around us were using their phones and just cheating blatantly. And I think that's part of trivia. It is competitive, and you want to feel like your knowledge is rewarded. And so we got almost a perfect score, but came in second. We got one wrong and came in second. And we saw the team cheating next to us the whole time. And so I went and did that trivia night with a good friend of mine, Johnny Sachs, who is a front of house manager over at Stoney's, and he was like, "You're good on a microphone. We could do this. This could be entertainment." And he is a nerd who loves Harry Potter very much, but works in a sports bar. And he wanted to bring nerds into his sports bar. So we started with Harry Potter trivia, and our goal was eventually down the road to get 400 people. And on that first night, it was like 650 people.
Yeah, Harry Potter brought in. It was amazing.
It was
so much
we
fun.
filled a sports bar, that huge, one of the biggest sports bars in the city.
Yeah.
Because they had that expansion with all Harry Potter nerds.
oh
And
my gosh. I don't doubt it for a second, though. How many scarves did you see and people whipping
it's
out their
amazing.
Harry
so
Potter
many
themed tattoos?
wands.
Oh,
We should have had a Harry Potter tattoo contest that night.
Oh man, I just want to get one so I can do it next time. We're definitely gonna.
But we're
going to
do Harry Potter again for sure. And they're usually Friday, Saturday nights, up to twice a month at Stoney's, and then it's always on their page. But that was how we got into it.
Mm-hmm.
You want to describe why it's a little different than other trivia?
Why it's different than other trivia nights? Yeah. It's we actually try to enforce the rules a little bit. It is much harder when you have that many people.
Yeah.
But we do a decent job of that. But then we like to have more fun with it. It's not just reading a question, then playing a song for 2 minutes, and reading a question. It's Meghan and I, who are two stand-up comedians, and we mess around. We know all the content. We have 3 weeks in between each one, so we just binge watch whatever it is.
We want it to be authentic. We write that we don't get trivia offline or anything. We write the questions and we sit.
Write. I write
your
every
own questions.
yeah, we write every
And we sit
single
and
question.
binge watch it, which is sometimes hard for the subject. Like Star Wars was rough, but it's authentic, and we want to be that nerdy about that subject. So when somebody comes up and is excited and wants to talk about it, it's not just like, oh, that was the question, I don't know anymore. It's like, no, I know this whole subject. And
It was funny. We did Star Wars last month, and like a 14-year-old girl came up to Meghan afterwards and was trying to ask her other questions about it.
we did original series Star Wars, and
Yeah.
she wanted to ask about the Star Wars universe, and I had to and she won third place. She was crushing it. She came with
Oh, wow.
her dad and her
Yeah.
little sister, and she was awesome.
That's
Just
awesome.
beat a bunch of dudes in their mid-40s.
Just slayed it. And she came up and she just wanted to chat, and I had to bend down and be like, hey, I'm going to be so honest with you. I studied this, but this is all that I know. I'm very sorry. She was so disappointed.
Oh, no.
But we just have a bunch of other fun things we do to just make it more not just a trivia night. It's going and have fun, because even if you kind of know it, it's still going to be a fun night.
Yeah, casual fans can have a good time too.
We did Seinfeld a few months ago and had an Elaine dance-off.
That sounds amazing.
It was magnificent.
It was
there were
also
gentlemen on
impromptu.
stage. Pardon?
It was impromptu.
Oh yeah, we just decided it. We do content in between the rounds when we're grading. So there's like parodies or content or things up on all the screens. So you're watching with your friends who you watch all this stuff or this show or this thing. And here's extra content. And we do drink specials and things that are after that subject. We really try to make it all inclusive. So it's like if you are a casual fan or a total nerd about that, come and you can have a good time. And it went beyond our expectations right away. And then it almost became like, oh my gosh, how do we maintain all these people?
Yeah.
And you can find it at That's My Jam on Facebook and all the social media stuff. And then our next one is actually this Saturday at Stoney's on 11th and Lincoln at 6 p.m. and it's Disney Pixar trivia. So.
We're going to have a blast. We're going to do Disney princess sing-alongs. We're going to do
costume contest.
Yeah,
we always have a costume contest.
There's always okay, so, you guys, I am straight up showing up as Jasmine. I don't even care. If I'm coming in, I will be Jasmine.
You'd think Ariel with the hair, but I like you not getting typecasted.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, now I need a new
I'm gonna bring a
costume because I
tiger.
was going to be Jasmine.
We can share Jasmine. We can share.
That's what I'm saying about Jasmine. She is awesome. She had a tiger best
She
friend.
had a tiger.
She could do anything.
Yeah, I'm gonna see where I can rent a tiger. But
That might be.
is that against the rules?
Bring your tiger.
And then my favorite thing is we have best team name. So we give away a prize for, just it's a dumb pun,
Yeah,
it's
whatever
usually a
kind of
dumb pun.
clever, make a pun, do something kind of basically whatever makes us chuckle. And then we each pick one and then we make the audience all vote. And I remember when we did It's Always Sunny, we had 400 people sing along to Dayman.
Oh. I bet that was so rewarding in and of itself.
It was pretty beautiful.
Yeah.
The It's Always Sunny crowd, it's kind of a raunchy show. So
I would imagine.
when we asked them to name the dentist system and everybody got that question right, I got a little scared. I was like, oh no.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that one's, I don't know that I could get that one. I do enjoy Sunny for sure, but the dentist system.
But it's really fun and it's authentic and we have a good time with it. And it's this great now monthly or bi-monthly add to our budget.
So every 3 weeks now.
Every 3 weeks. So we try
Yeah.
basically 2 a month. And that can guarantee financial stability in a really nice way, while it's also something really fun and it doesn't feel like work at all.
Yeah, I get to have a microphone in front of my mouth for 2 hours with 400 to 700 people listening. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and speaking of the financial stuff, let's talk a little bit about budgeting for a show.
Sure. When you try to go and get a comedy show, when you go in and you walk in, you're like, hey, I'm a comic and I want to use your space. It depends, show versus mic. Mic is, an open mic is the idea of having one person getting paid, the host, and whatever it makes sense for, you can either do like a bar deal, so a percentage of bar sales. You could do a flat rate, and then that one person has to just keep bringing up 40, 50 comics throughout the night. And so, you should make a decent amount of money. I'd say my hosts in Denver are about between 70 and 100 a night. There's some that go above. There's some who, bless their hearts, are going low. So that's the open mic payment. And then for budgeting for a show, a lot of shows in Denver are free, which is awesome because you have a lot of them at breweries, you have a lot of them at distilleries. I have mine at a winery. And when you go in and you try to make a budget, you want to think about, is it a weekend or a weeknight? And you want to make it that it's worthwhile for comics. And I think as far as booking for shows, it's really nice to say, here's the date, here's the time, here's how much you'll be paid, and you can have whatever you like to drink, and be very clear. And a lot of comedians don't have that business sense yet or have that skill developed. So anytime that I can try to be that example, I do. Trying to get a budget. So I like a show that's short and sweet. So I have an opener, feature, and headliner at mine, and I'm the host. And since I do all the promoting and I design my own poster for the show, and you got to add in all these different components. You try to go in and ask for a budget, and then so I had one that started, and then it was raised, and now after this time, hoping to raise it. And then the more that you get, you can have a bigger headliner come in. You can always do drop-in spots for comics that want to come in. You can fill some time, but you don't have to pay them because it's a drop. They were going to go to a mic. Instead, they actually get a good crowd, and I can get them a glass of wine or something, and it's still worth your while. But going in and asking, I think a flat rate is great to start. My rule was, whatever you do, make the original deal and then say after 3 shows. So you do 3 shows, and this is what we did for trivia too. We did 3 shows, and That way you keep the money exactly where it is, and you want it to be mutually beneficial. You want the venue to profit, you want, you know, the comedy scene and the comedians and everybody to profit. So you do 3 at the original agreement, and then if you exceed expectations, ask for more. If you don't, you can renegotiate. But it is a skill to walk in and be able to be like, hey, this is what I want to do, and this is what I think we're worth, and you shouldn't sell yourself short on that.
Absolutely. Do you run into people that negotiate with you that you have an issue with?
I only one time doing my show, I had a headliner that was coming into town who I booked at a certain amount, and then he agreed to it, and then he had a follow-up of, is there any wiggle room on your financials? And, you know, you had agreed to the original budget, and this is what I pay headliners, and it's a week night, so it's definitely the best they're going to make in that scenario. I've checked, and I kind of keep up my my finger on the pulse of every kind of show and budget and what people are getting paid to do what. So I never gyp anybody. I'd rather gyp myself because it's my show, and, you know, do that, so make sure everyone's getting paid and feels happy. But that was weird. And then he just never even showed up, so it wasn't even a problem. He canceled on me.
Oh,
so.
no. Well, that happens. So.
Indeed.
I think I got a drop-in spot on that show.
So, yeah, I mean, it's, and learning the skills, the confidence I had came from managing a bar and knowing bar sales. So then I was able to explain that to a bunch of comedians for a little bit of time, to go in and have like the confidence to ask for a certain budget and kind of know the money behind it. And I think that's an important skill. That's huge in the scene. If you're going to run shows, if you're going to travel and try to go and show up to shows, you got to know where the money's coming from, especially if it's a free show and not a ticketed show.
Right. Well, and speaking of travel,
Yeah.
I would imagine going on, once you get to a point where you can do some traveling, it adds up quickly, right? We're talking plane tickets and Ubers and hotel stays,
Yes.
right? Food.
I mean, yeah, all those things exist, but you can do them cheaply.
Yeah.
You can do them. I think if you have the time, this is a big thing for comedians' budget for living on very little money. Comedians go and work for maybe an hour total for a night. You know, you have to get there. You might do your 45 to an hour set, and then that's your day. So you have a lot of time to plan things, and maybe you do a writing gig, or maybe as soon as you're a comic that's living financially solely off of comedy. That's your day. So you have some time, so you can plan. So you can have friends in other comics in other cities that if you like a good couch or floor, you can crash on. There are very cheap airlines, and if you learn their algorithms, you can be hacking into $20, $30 flights very easily.
Tuesdays are the best day.
Yes, indeed.
Wait, Tuesdays are the best day to buy tickets?
To buy, yep.
Yeah, okay. 'Cause I was
Absolutely.
like, I've always found the cheapest tickets to for flying are on Wednesdays.
Yes,
Yes.
but buying the ticket on Tuesday. I mean, I
Yes.
just bought a flight for Altercation Comedy Festival down in Austin, which I'm doing for $27 to Austin. So
Nice.
yes,
That's a great score.
I worked very hard to get Frontier Elite status, so now I actually can bring a bag and pick a seat.
I didn't know they even had an elite status.
There's very few people. It's probably mostly comics that are on that list. I think it's me and another comic, Sam Talent, who was like really proud when he got it. So, but it's like, it's nice because I always just travel with a backpack, very light, and you know, learn public transit.
This is my backpack for the camera. There are cameras and the radio, but yeah, it's just a normal transport. That's all I got.
And you just go in and sleep on a plane. I used to think that you could sleep in travel, but then I'd travel with other people and they'd be like, no, you have to get a hotel or somewhere to stay. But I can sleep anywhere. So if I have a 6-hour train ride, I'm like, sure, I'll sleep right here. Bus, let's go.
Exactly. I've always taken the red eye
Yeah.
for that reason.
Ooh,
Yep.
So I can sleep on the plane.
I did that the first time to New York a couple weeks ago, and we'll try it again, but I did not fall asleep on that plane. And then it was 7 a.m. in New York, and I was with Andreas, and I'm like, all right, let's go. We're in New York.
I think the key to cheap travel is it's very nice nowadays because there's a lot of Facebook groups of comedians like called Hey, I'm coming to this city. There's one for Denver. Hey, I'm coming to Denver. And if you have questions, needs, like food requirements or want to know recommendations or how to get booked or whatever, you can just communicate with the comics of that scene and the ones that run shows or have open couches or know how to, I mean, I don't know, people borrow vans from each other to go on tour, and you never know. It's a very like connected network, and so we all are trying to do this crazy thing and do it for as cheap as possible, and everyone's kind of looking out for each other a little bit. So there is that connection in that network.
Yeah, that's actually, I believe, one of the surprising things that I've learned today is how supportive you guys are of each other. Because you would think, and show business is pretty cutthroat, right? And I would imagine more so on the comedy scene. But to learn you're so supportive is exciting.
Yeah. I think definitely locally, Denver for sure. There's been some other scenes I've gone to that people aren't as nice to each other. But we're all just trying to do this dumb thing, and because someone else I know gets a Conan set, Conan's still going on. Like there will be more spots to get. I just have to work harder to get it.
And
you
the
know?
climb never stops. It's never like, oh, they got this and now they're there forever. You know, it's whatever. You also have to find your voice and what's interesting to you and what your goals are. Like I've learned recently more that my style isn't maybe the most kind of generic club, and I'm going to have to go more of that DIY style and try to respect that. And that takes away all the envy and the confusion pretty quickly. Like,
I want to talk about style. Sorry.
Yeah.
You've mentioned DIY a few times.
Sure.
Yeah. So I guess what do you mean by that?
well, we do run our show Shantytown, which is really as DIY as it gets. We're very ska punk rock kids. And I love that kind of, instead of dealing with a venue, instead of, paying money just to have a space or a time, just going and doing it, like just getting dirty, putting the time in. And so we do it traveling house style, but there's festivals, there's things that are more that like, all right, let's just get some duct tape and put it together. And the authenticity of comedy is the fact that you don't need necessarily the greatest acoustics or the most comfy seats or the absolute best to have like that raw, funny, laughing moment. I mean, and with music, you want the highest quality possible to hear it. If my voice sounds a little distorted, it's not the end of the world. You're still going to hear the content and see the action. And so you can kind of go on that. You can kind of think there's something beautiful here to this actual show, and not let all the other marketing crazy things, just at the root of it. And as you're learning and as you're getting good at it, like to find that in the soul of comedy. And so that's that very DIY. And DIY I would consider in Denver anything that isn't the club. And so that there's like 10 to 12 shows a night here at different breweries and venues and things. It's amazing. That's a big scene.
Yeah.
With Shantytown, we DIY it a little more. We go to people's backyards, or in the winter we go to houses. In March we did what used to be an old preschool that's now apartments. It was never really converted. It was still a preschool. But we go, and Meghan makes a drink. She is an amazing bartender, so she somehow makes a cheap liquor taste amazing. And then we sell that. We sell PBR and whatever beer.
Donation based is what we have to say technically for the
Yes.
It's a free show. You come in, it's at somebody's house, and we to be able to pay the comics, we utilize the assets that we have. So I make a big batch cocktail, which is very cheap, but most people will pay $3-4 for a cocktail that's gonna get you a little tipsy.
That drink at a bar would be $7.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, that's what I was with the well, right?
Yeah.
The well liquor that you're using anyway.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna touch on probably something that's a little bit touchy, but I've always heard the stereotype of like groupies, so to speak, or being hit on after a show, right? And you mentioned that there's a vulnerability to being a comic.
Yeah. I would say being a female comic. I mean, Jeremy, I know you get hit on after like every show, like constantly.
Yeah, I am.
This is just a quick kind of thing as far as like females who are comedians. Like in being a woman in comedy, there are some things that do need to be pointed out that men don't understand, like the difference or the differential. When you start doing open mics, a lot of these mics are at 11 at night and late at night, and you're alone as a young girl in a bar with a bunch of men who might be slightly crazy.
It was like college for me.
Exactly. And there's just the extra things like just walking to your car alone or just like leaving your drink, and you want to have that, you have to find a community and you have to like bond. So that as you're learning how to be a comic and you're growing your material and you're developing your skill, it is scary and there is a vulnerability, and that's very part of what's going on currently, accepting that that's been going on forever and trying to move past that. So there's that element. But I think also the other more weird, maybe not so predatory type thing is after shows. I am a dirty comic. I tell some dirty jokes. I talk about sex. I do. And then I get off stage, and then you have a guy just ready to repeat your joke back to you like it's a pickup line. And it just feels so gross.
Yeah.
So gross. I will say there's different layers to this. I did a show the other day that had 2 comics in from LA who used Tinder to recruit the audience. They got on Tinder and
No.
The worst part was they were in the back making fun of some of the people that came. I hated that.
Yeah, I didn't like that at all. And then you're just going to bolt. Anyway, they're fine. They're LA comics. I'm sure it's a skill that is popular. I heard other people doing it. But it's a weird one because I feel a little bit like a hypocrite. Many years ago, my friend Meghan and I went to do a show back in Buffalo, and we were trying to pack it out, and she had that idea. So maybe like 4 guys came, but then they wanted to talk to you after the show, and I was like, nope, this is gross. I don't want to do this at all. It's like the idea of taking comedy and then adding an extra layer to it of like, you're working.
You're catfishing a little bit.
You're catfishing.
Yeah.
You're also, you just were entertained. Now you're backing me into a corner expecting more than what you have paid for or what you've experienced because I'm a woman and because you think it's okay now that I'm cool and I can talk about things freely and not get embarrassed and I'm open-minded. And I mean, I was raised by a health teacher, so I know how to talk about things pretty bluntly. And you just saw that as my performance, but now you're going to hold it on a one-on-one conversation, and that is odd.
Yeah.
The other side of the coin, I'm sure there's a lot of male comics and women comics who travel, and yeah, if you're a single person and you're traveling a lot and you meet a bunch of people each night, I'm sure you can have different people in each city ready to go.
There you go. I got a boyfriend in every city.
Heck yes, yeah. You do a very similar thing. I mean, you're taking these tiny little moments in all these different places, and to be able to live like that on the road is very similar, I would imagine.
Yes, definitely. And eating on the cheap, right?
Yep.
I know how to make a grilled cheese with an iron in a hotel room. Should you need it?
I know how to find good street meat, like whatever city I find, whatever that's gonna be. Oh, under $5, let's go, and then I can get the authentic thing,
Right, exactly. Then you're living like a local.
Exactly.
So, have you had any experience with along those same lines about feeling awkward after you told a joke to it? Right.
I have epilepsy, so I have seizures, and after sets multiple times, I have people that'll come up to me and just go, "Hey, my cousin has epilepsy too," and just. Great.
We're all part of the group. We definitely know each other.
It's like, I'm from Buffalo. Oh, I'm from Syracuse. So cool. That's like 4 hours away.
Yeah, I mean, I always enjoy it when people come up to me and go, "Oh, it's a great job," and I know a lot of friends of mine will say, "Oh, thank you. I like to go." I think I've learned this from Meghan. Be like, "Oh, thank you so much. I'm Jeremy. I'll, introduce yourself."
I always shake hands and introduce myself to anybody who comes up and compliments. I always get their name. I think that's because they're coming and complimenting you, and I just wanted to take 1 second and like just hear one thing about them.
Yeah.
That's like one skill that can just keep you a little bit humble at the end of your show.
You had to hear 20 minutes of me.
Exactly. Well, and I feel like that's definitely a customer service skill to begin with. Just taking a moment to listen and look in somebody's eyes.
Yeah, they just came up and that's a big thing. I know after shows or concerts or things that I want to go say, "Hey, great show," but it takes a little bit of courage to muster it, and you just did that. You just stepped outside of your realm. You didn't have to come compliment my performance. I want to know your name, and I want to thank you properly.
Yeah, so we got just a minute here. Tell me your advice for those starting on the scene.
Don't know. Comedy is the greatest high I've ever known. It's an addiction, and I love it. And if you are thankful, this is something I've really been focusing on. Every microphone I get, every stage time I get, every minute, and this is more recent. It's just be very thankful and very present and very aware and take advantage.
Be funny, be cool, don't be mean, and you really only need 2 out of 3 of those to be booked on shows.
Be funny and be cool is the greatest advice. I remember hearing that from Adam Caton-Holland and Jordan Dahl, and that is be cool, be funny.
Nice. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
This is a blast.
Absolutely. Be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page and visit tmjff.com. And have a good day, you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank